The 2025-2026 NBA season is about to begin, and for Scottie Barnes, it feels like a make or break year. It's crazy to think that he's already entering his 5th season with the Toronto Raptors. It doesn't feel like it was that long ago when he was holding up the Rookie of the Year trophy, full of energy and promise. Since then, his career has been solid, not disappointing by any means, but it also hasn't exploded in the way that many people hoped it would. Barnes has put up steady numbers year after year, around 17 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists per game. Numbers that most players would be thrilled with, but for someone with his talent, those stats have started to feel like the baseline. Fans and analysts have been waiting for the leap, the kind of jump that takes a player from being good to being the face of the franchise. Scottie was supposed to be that guy, the one who would lead Toronto into its next era after the Kyle Lowry and Pascal Siakam days. And while he's definitely still capable, that next step hasn't fully happened yet. Part of the challenge is figuring out what that leap even means for him. Some people think it's about scoring, that he needs to average over 22 or 23 points per game. Others say it's about efficiency and leadership. The truth is, it's probably a bit of both. Scottie has shown flashes of dominance. He has had games where he takes over, bullying defenders with his strength, making the right passes, and defending like his life depends on it. But he's also had nights where he fades into the background, takes tough mid-range shots instead of attacking the rim, or relying too much on jumpers that aren't falling. His shooting has been one of the biggest talking points ever since he entered the league. Last season, he hit around 30% of his threes and 46% overall from the field. It's decent, but not great for someone expected to be a primary option. The preseason hasn't helped his case either. Against Denver earlier in the month, he went 0 for 6 from the field and scored just 1 point, though he did lead the team in assists with 5. It might seem like a small sample, but as I will show you later on, there have been other games that have summed up his problems perfectly. So Scottie has to figure out, when his shot isn't falling, how does he still impact the game offensively? And that's where his next evolution has to come. Scottie doesn't need to turn into Steph Curry overnight, but he does need to become more comfortable creating his own shots and making plays when defenses close in. He's always been a great passer. That's what makes him special, and he sees the game like a point forward. But the Raptors need him to find that balance between setting others up and taking over when it's his time. He has to become a true offensive engine, someone who can start the play, finish it, or find the open man in between. This year, that job will be trickier because of the team's new addition. Brandon Ingram is now in town, and while that's exciting, it also changes everything. Ingram is a scorer by nature. He likes to have the ball in his hands, create off the dribble, and operate in the same mid-range areas where Barnes often plays. These two are very similar in height, which means they can easily get in each other's way if the system isn't set up properly. And that's where head coach Darko Rajakovic has a tough task, finding a way for both of them to thrive together. In theory, it makes sense. Ingram brings the scoring punch the Raptors lacked last season, and Barnes adds the playmaking, defense, and energy. Together, they could be one of the most versatile frontcourt duos in the East. But spacing will be key. With Jakob Poeltl not being a floor stretcher, and RJ Barrett being a streaky shooter, there isn't much room for both Ingram and Scottie to attack inside. Toronto's offense could easily get clogged if they don't figure out how to keep the paint open. The good news is that Barnes doesn't shy away from the work. Over the summer, he reportedly focused on improving his shot creation and ball handling, things that can help him unlock new parts of his game. If he can consistently get to his spots, use his strength to draw contact, and make the right reads when double teamed, everything else will fall into place. And when he's engaged, he's a nightmare for defenses. His size, vision, and touch make him one of the most unique players in the league. What often gets overlooked with Scottie is how good he is defensively. Even last season when Toronto struggled, Scottie was a bright spot on that end of the floor. He guards multiple positions, protects the rim, and plays with a motor that never stops. It's not an exaggeration when we say that he can guard 1 through 5 seamlessly. He's often the player holding the defense together when things start to break down. That's why even when his offense isn't clicking, he still finds ways to contribute. The Raptors' success this season comes down to how well Scottie and Ingram can coexist. These guys don't need to be best friends on the floor right away, but they do need to figure out when to take turns, when to play off each other, and when to step back. If Barnes can become a secondary playmaker who keeps the ball moving and attacks when defenses focus on Ingram, Toronto's offense will look a lot smoother. But if both players end up crowding the same spaces and slowing things down, it can turn messy fast. This is where coaching and chemistry matters a lot. Darko has talked about wanting an offense that's more free-flowing, with constant movement and unselfishness. That could be perfect for Barnes. He doesn't need to be a pure scorer to dominate. He just needs to be involved, touching the ball in rhythm and making decisions quickly. Because when he's passive, the team feels it. But when he's active, the Raptors play faster, defend better, and look far more confident. Scottie's leap doesn't have to be all about numbers. It's also about his presence. Can he be the guy who sets the tone every night? If he can bring that same energy from from his rookie year, but with more maturity and polish, this could finally be the season where everything clicks. Toronto's front office clearly believes in him a lot. They gave him a massive 5-year, $224 million extension, putting him right alongside the league's young stars financially. That kind of deal comes with a lot of pressure, but also trust. The Raptors see him as their cornerstone, the player they want to build around for the next decade. Now it's time for Scotty to prove that faith was worth it. There's still plenty of optimism in Toronto. Many analysts and insiders have even said that if Barnes takes the right step forward, the Raptors could win around 50 games. Now, I personally think that's a stretch given the team's current depth, but it speaks to how much his growth could change everything. If Barnes figures it out, if he can blend that natural playmaking and defensive intensity with improved scoring, then the Raptors can surprise a lot of people. But again, if things stagnate, if the offense doesn't evolve, or if him and Ingram never quite mesh, Toronto will find themselves in the frustrating middle ground. That's the worst area to be. You're not bad enough for a rebuild, but you're nowhere near good enough to contend. Now, even though that might be true, one thing is for sure. Scotty Barnes is the key. He's the heartbeat of this team. The Raptors don't just need him to be good. They need him to lead, to attack with purpose, to play with confidence, and make everyone around him better. The potential is there. Everyone sees it. It's always been there. Now it's time to turn that potential into something real. If Scotty can take that next step, the Raptors' revival starts there. Because Toronto is looking for that next true superstar. The problem is that his preseason hasn't exactly been smooth. Now you could argue that the real question is not about Scotty, it's about how the Raptors are using him. In the preseason games, Scotty's shot wasn't falling. He had just gone 6 for 30. That's his total from a few matches together, not in one game. And the majority of those were jumpers. Now that's not ideal, but it's also not the end of the world either. He's proven that he can score around the rim and impact the game in other ways. The problem seems to be his role in this new lineup. In the first couple of seasons, Scotty had no plays called for him, but still found ways to dominate. Then last year, he got a much bigger role and often had to create everything for himself. At times, he had to create too much. Now he's somewhere in between, and the Raptors don't seem to know how to use him properly. In the preseason game against Boston, Scotty was practically invisible early on. He spent a lot of time standing in the corner or setting light screens while the Celtics built a lead. When he did get touches, which was usually when he played with the bench guys like Agbaji and Mamukelashvili, he looked much more comfortable. He attacked the rim, he set up his teammates, and even sparked a comeback run. But with the starters, he just didn't have the same rhythm or involvement. Defensively, once again, he was still excellent. He made a huge weak side block and was clearly the glue holding the defense together. When he was off the floor, Toronto's defense fell apart. And then when he checked back in, things immediately tightened up again. That's how important he is on that end of the court. The takeaway though is that Scotty himself isn't the issue. The Raptors system though might be. He's not a knockdown shooter or a strong screener, so just parking him in the corner doesn't make any sense. Darko needs to find ways to get him more involved off the ball. Have him make some cuts, have him post up on mismatches, or even have him operate as a playmaker in motion. Don't just let him drift through possession. Yes, his shooting has been rough, and yes, he does look lost at times, but Barnes is too talented and too driven for this slump to define him. The challenge is for the Raptors to figure out how to use him properly, because if they do, everything will fall into place. Because there's no reason that they should have all their main guys on the floor like they did together against Boston, and it doesn't go as planned. They ended up losing a close one that game. 2 points. And even though the newcomer Ingram looked sharp with 20 points and 10 rebounds, the starting lineup just didn't look that great. Of course, Scotty will be the main concern. And even though it's preseason, you still get a little bit worried. Like against Boston, why is he taking 13 shots? Majority of them being tough fadeaways or pull-ups, instead of using his size and power to attack the rim. Why did Scotty look so hesitant at times? He doesn't seem to have the same confidence. He's not attacking players the way we saw him do when he first entered the league. After bouncing back last year to become an all-star, this upcoming season is a big test for him to prove that he can be a go-to guy. To get there though, he needs to get back to his aggressive self and find his scoring touch again. Offensively, as everyone predicted, spacing looks like it could be a problem for this team. Pirtle does not shoot from deep, Barnes still struggles from 3, and RJ Barrett is inconsistent. That means that defenses will focus on Ingram and quickly, clogging up the paint and making it way harder for the Raptors to get good looks. It was very noticeable early on against Boston. The floor felt cramped. When Mamukelashvili checked in, things opened up a bit because he can actually stretch the floor. Even Scotty seemed more comfortable playing next to him. Eventually, they gotta make it work though, because the Raptors are entering this season with a new look front court, and that's going to be the topic of discussion every time they play. It's one of the biggest storylines in the East. It's two incredibly talented players whose games overlap in a lot of ways. They're similar in size, they operate from mid-range spots, and they both still need the ball in their hands to be effective. The Athletic's Eric Corrine pointed out that while Ingram brings the shot creation that Barnes still lacks, Barnes' playmaking and screen setting should, in theory, complement Ingram. The problem is that so far, everything looks good in theory, but there's not enough proof that it actually works on the basketball floor. And this isn't just a tactical issue, it's also about the team's direction. Ingram is making $40 million a year, while Barnes just started his massive $224 million max contract. The Raptors simply cannot afford for this duo to fail. When the trade for Ingram went down, it felt like a gamble, the kind of move a team makes when it's desperate for offense. Toronto needed someone who could score, and Ingram fit that bill, but it's clear they didn't think it fully through on how he'd fit next to Barnes. Now, of course, there's a lot of time to still figure out the chemistry, but it's obvious it's a work in progress. The potential, though, is there if Barnes can keep developing as a playmaker and Ingram can find his rhythm as a scorer. They really could form one of the most balanced forward duos in the East. But there are clear and visible issues, and if it doesn't click, the Raptors might eventually have to make a choice between the two. Still, though, you gotta give some credit to the front office. They took a swing instead of sitting still. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but at least the team is trying to find a direction after a few years of being stuck in the middle. To see how good the rest of the Raptors are, you have to check out this video right here.